So before you, for the listeners and for us, explain BIM one sentence really simply.
BIM is building information modeling, and BIM is a tool. BIM is not an object, is not
a software.
Not a software, it's not a picture. Actually, we should call it a tool belt to be a little more comprehensive.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the three pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today's guests are Jacob Hansen and Colton Browning. Jacob is the founder of Hansen Consulting Group, HCG, a business solutions and BIM consulting firm serving multiple industries. He specializes in organizational structure, program optimization, and strategic transformation. He's passionate about creating a more connected and advanced built world through BIM, consulting, coordination, and modeling. His recent work includes building BIM programs for clients, including Taiwanese GC on the TSMC AZ Fab 21 project. Colton is a partner, mechanical engineer, and BIM manager in HCG, known for leading high-performance coordination teams. He brings deep expertise in CAD, BIM processing, process piping, thermal pipe stress analysis using tools like Revit, Caesar 2, and Scan to BIM. Colton focuses on bridging design and field precision, helping teams deliver cost-effective, structurally sound solutions from concept to completion. Together, Jacob and Colton are helping reshape how construction teams leverage BIM and leadership to drive smarter, more integrated project delivery. And with all those many kind words and warm regards said, gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate you having us here.
Yeah, we're excited. We don't dive into, as in we do IT and cyber, but we're not BIM, right? We are not that. We're very much not that. And people start always saying, well, you do technology, so it's all the same. And it's like, it's not in any way, shape, or form the same. So yeah, so this is going to be exciting. Before we get into all the BIM funness, tell us a little bit of your origin stories. Tell us how you got into the industry and a little bit of history about the firm.
Yeah, I'll give you a start. Hansen Consulting Group as a whole. Obviously, my last name, Hansen, I'd started the firm a little over 3 years ago, but my origins in the AEC space nearly a decade ago started in the residential side, got into roughing and trimming homes on the electrical side, gave me some insight and some opportunity that really piqued my interest, led me to where I am today. That slowly evolved into commercial, eventually got opportunities to get into, thankfully enough, the semiconductor, the high-tech, mission critical space, and had the opportunity to dive into BIM early on as field BIM coordinator, evolved more into BIM management, gave me the exposure to a lot of different facets of BIM, CAD, VDC within the AEC space that I'm very, very fortunate for, very thankful for a lot of the connections too. I think I should probably say that first above everything else is a lot of the relationships that made that happen.
Connections are king. I find that to be true, truer and truer every day.
Absolutely. And that's really where we're at today as a company. And I think Colton would testify to this too, is, we're here to build partnerships, build these relationships with people in the industry that are going to last for decades. As we continue to scale, as we continue to build, as we continue to become more efficient in our processes and our operations, we've got to be able to communicate and help each other.
Thank you. And as a partner here, my name is Colton Browning. I graduated from mechanical engineering school at ASU.
Go Devils!
Go Devils!
Go Devils!
Yeah, I graduated from there a very long time ago. It feels like about a decade now. And right out of school, I got my first job as a project manager for a commercial roofing company, and I really got my my feet wet in the construction industry at that point, understanding how things work. And it was cool going on to different projects. And I was fortunate being able to be the roofing contractor of the last ones on site. And so not the last ones, but the last ones before the dry in. And so we get to see how the whole structure gets to go into play and how the different trades interact. And so that really piqued my interest and showed me how the construction industry evolves and moves throughout the project, throughout the sequence of that. And that's really what made me want to get into more of a project management stance. And after the roofing company, I got a job at Intel and their clean rooms, and I started working on their machines, actually doing maintenance on their machines. From there, I met Jacob at a company out there that was doing construction for those machines and designing the layouts for the MEP systems, the electrical, the mechanical, the process piping for the different gases going through the process. So from there, we just started working together and designing these machines, and we found that together we were actually very, very successful. And we were able to take processes that were in place and streamline them and change teams that were 20 people down to 3. And it was quite an experience. And from there, we were born in the subfab. We went our separate ways, and I continued doing that and excelling in the BIM, and then going into the engineering field, where I started doing pipe stress analysis and evolving my pipe knowledge. And then we came back together, and we're doing it all together now. And it's really cool. And to piggyback off of what Jacob just said, it's all about the relationships, the connections you make, and the experiences you have. And even from that roofing trailer that contractor I was working for, even walking into construction trailers and having that experience of being on site really brings in that whole envelope of experience to the table. And that's really what we want to do. We want to give people or professionals the space to do what they do best, give them the ability to give themselves the oversight and the projects that they need or that they desire in order to excel and be better.
So as you mentioned, Jacob, the firm is named after you. So when did it go from the solo shop to, hey, let's expand this out. Let's get a partner in here. Let's get some employees. Let's get this thing rolling.
About 18 months ago, that process started. I was, prior to that point, for about 2 years, an independent contractor just solely on my own, providing BIM consulting services for a few different entities. Just circumstances allowed me to step out and say, okay, what do we want to do to continue to scale this? As I talked with trusted family members, friends, and other individuals who said, hey, I really want to grow. I feel like I've gained enough experience. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. I absolutely hate that word, to be honest. But I knew enough to say there's gaps here. And in our specific vertical at that time was strictly semiconductor. And I said there's contractors, there's designers, there's engineers, there's multiple entities, multiple stakeholders on these projects that I can see the gap that they're missing in BIM and VDC. Necessarily technical. It's not about the AI. It's not about the implementation of a variety of tools. It's about collaboration. It's who can I connect with? What can I do to solve somebody else's problems and bring the right solutions to them? Introduced Colton at that point. We've stayed in contact for many years. And I called him up and said, Colton, looking at some opportunities here across the board, whether it's BIM modeling or whether it's coordination or management. I said, I need your help. And we were fortunate enough to land a really awesome project last summer where we were involved in some electrical modeling scope at Intel. And Colton was a huge part of that. He brings a lot of technical experience and expertise, and he was able to come in. We built a team around the two of us that allowed us to focus on getting the scope accomplished. And the rest is history. We're here today, and we're doing more than semiconductor now. We're looking at engineering, we're looking at architecture. We're not diversifying too much in a sense, but we're looking at opportunities. What can we do to bridge different gaps where there are problems that need solutions?
So you started originally with the concept of BIM coordination. So why did it change? Was it just opportunity landed at your feet, or was there something else?
I would say it's just that. Yeah, it did start with BIM coordination. Very simply, I was stuck in the middle of a semiconductor fab. I was working with the trades, so electricians and process pipe fitters, and we were out there. We were taking a BIM model. We'd sit out there with a gang box, and here's a computer. Here's what it should look like. Here's your guys' ISOs. Let's map it out according to some site coordinates and whatnot. Go make it fit. And from there, it took a little while, but over a couple months and years, I said, hey, there's ways to be more efficient with this. It allowed me to get back into the office, or actually probably into the office for the first time, working with modelers directly, which Colton was at the time. So Colton, you guys are doing great at your modeling, but here's some suggestions, here's some input. Come out of the field with me. Come look at this. Let's laser scan it. Let's get your eyes out there and say, hey, this is not constructible, or there's better ways of installing this electrical conduit. So we were able to blend the office space, the field space, which then naturally grew into more of the management, the VDC coordination. And I've learned it's just a natural process. And that opened new doors with other companies. It opened new doors with my own consulting practices, where I could go work on other projects. As you talked about just in the beginning, it ended up at TSMC with a variety of different companies. A lot of it was the consulting side, where I could go in and I can implement design and BIM practices for general contractor. I could go work for a subcontractor and say, hey, this is the best way to work with this scope, with this GC. And it really was just kind of a natural process of opportunity. Right people, right places, right time.
So before you go, for the listeners and for us, explain BIM one sentence really simply.
BIM is building information modeling, and BIM is a tool. BIM is not an object, is not
a software.
Not a software, it's not a picture. Actually, we should call it a tool belt. To be a little more comprehensive. It is not a one-stop, fix-it-all solution.
Got it. Okay, so this tool belt helps people do what?
You want to answer that one, Colton?
This tool belt that gives you it's a translation tool between the trades. It allows a duct installer to come in and be an electrician for a moment and get into the mind of the person that he's trying to coordinate with. A picture's worth 1,000 words, and that's essentially what we're providing is a detailed picture, but it's way more than just a picture. You can do BIM without the picture. BIM is a tool that allows for all the components within the model to be itemized and extracted in a way that can be fabricated. So you can essentially hit print from a BIM model, send it to a fab shop, and it ends up in the field where it can be installed. Kind of like an IKEA bed frame. You just A goes to A, B goes to B, and then you can go down the line, and the coordination's already been done.
Well, look for what it is, building information modeling. And information requires input, it requires output. You're going to have suggestions from architects, engineers, you're going to have concepts, you're going to have designs. You then create it in a 3D space. You can then extract what Colton's talking about in data is cost. You can extract schedule, you can extract environmental. We refer to those as BIM dimensions. If you do a quick Google search on that, you'll see traditionally 1D through 7D. And now people are starting to add on 9D, 10D, whether it's one and others. BIM's like I said, a tool belt of just process. And it's really dictated about what you put into it and what you want to get out of it.
So look, anyone that's doing any type of building, whether it's commercial or even residential, has some sort of phases, right? And they all interact, right? Ducting, electrical, right? MEP, all of that happens. So then why don't all projects, does it make sense for all projects to have BIM, to have that overhead?
Pretty broad question.
Yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
Pretty broad answer. It all depends, because BIM isn't just here's a model, go build. There's different degrees or levels of development on a model. It can be very simple as a concept. It can be as extreme and as polar as a digital twin, where you have a real living, breathing construction document in a digital space that could be connected to real life data according to cost, according to schedule. You talk about a real digital twin with sensors and real world input. Not every project's going to need that. Some projects may require concept, and then you're going to have everything in between. So it really just depends on the owner. It depends on the contractor, whether it's a PMO organization, whether it's a GC. Depends on the capabilities of the subcontractors, and then it also depends on the capabilities of the BIM and VDC firm. There's so many factors, and that's probably what makes this industry so challenging and so polarizing in a lot of ways.
Well, we like polarizing because
Yes.
that's where the details are. This is what we want to extract, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you guys work in pretty large scale projects, right? And so you talked about a digital twinning. Where is it where it stops being a discussion? Like, if you're not doing this, you're not being competitive.
Good question. Colton, you have any thoughts on that? Before I run away with the show today?
I'm chewing on that one. You take it right now. I'll follow up on the back end.
It's an interesting thought. I've run into some individuals. I was up at the Reality Capture Network conference in Boise back in the fall. There's a gentleman who was doing digital twin for Dallas-Fort Worth terminal expansions, and it was really fascinating. On their project, they implemented reality capture. They were out there doing the LiDAR scans. They were implementing like sensors, occupation sensors, where they could track people coming and going through the terminal. And they incorporated all this data into these real living models and allowed them to understand and visualize the space in a more effective way. In terms of layout, in terms of operation, in terms of maintenance, it gave them a more holistic approach towards the project as a whole. Now there's other projects, for example, TSMC, a little bit different approach. They have these big fabrications, these fabs, and we know exactly what's going to go into them. There's going to be tool sets based off of manufacturing, which I won't speak to manufacturing at all. Not my wheelhouse, not my experience. But a lot of that is what predetermines BIM implementation, engineering design, how the building's laid out. And so they're probably not going to go as far as a DFW building because they already have in their minds what they want to manufacture. It then allows you to start this roadmap of, okay, we know where we want to get. This is where we are. We can weed out a lot of the extras. We really only need to understand from a VDC standpoint how our MEP systems are going to collaborate. What space management do we have? Where can we utilize and be more efficient? Where can we value engineer material out? They're growing into some of the costs and schedule, but it's not quite there like it may be on some other projects, which we don't have a lot of experience in these, but you're talking about like high rises and you're talking about K through 12, you're talking about hospitals or healthcare. A lot of those projects are really, really involved in the cost and schedule aspects of BIM, whereas semiconductor and others may not be at this point.
So, because I'm going to really try here. Obviously, this makes sense when you got probably $1 billion plus projects. Does it make sense on a 20 million? Like, especially at the level that you guys are working at. Does it really make sense at a 20 million, at a $5 million project, $1 million project?
Or a tiny house? These are all deep questions. We get this all the time where people always say, like, it seems like a lot. It seems like a lot for a project, but there has to be these thresholds of like, oh, if you're not doing this, you're totally leaving money on the table. Like it just becomes a simple business discussion compared to any process thing.
Well, we are doing a small project right now. We're doing about a 2,400 square foot RV office space, and we are using BIM. We're not sinking a ton of money into it, but yeah, we've created concepts for it, and we're working with architects, we're working with engineers now to create some construction documents. And it's definitely not a $10 million project, maybe a couple $100,000 project. But
wow.
we use it for what needs to be used. We really try to focus on what matters and weed out anything that doesn't. We get into a subcontractor who's doing a $40, $50 million scope at semiconductor. Absolutely. We're going to be a lot more involved in the process and the tools and the technology we're using and the implementation, way more so than we would be on this little office space.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, Will, yes, it can be used on every project. Just depends on to what degree it needs to be used and how much the owner shows the interest in it and is willing to pay for that.
And to piggyback off of that, I agree with everything Jacob has said. What I've seen about projects is it always comes down to what the owner needs. If they want it to move fast, if they want to avoid issues, if they want to get through the permitting process, the red tape before the construction happens, then use BIM, use our design services to get you through that process so that you identify all the pinch points before they even happen. It gets to a point where you have a bunch of contractors on site. They want to get this done quick, and so they rely on one coordinating head to make sure that goes through. So that's really where BIM, the coordination process of BIM, plays into the whole construction process. Now, for tiny homes or for even single residential homes, it doesn't need to be BIMmed. The answer is no. It doesn't absolutely need to be BIMmed. but it does have its value. It holds its value in the cost analysis. If you're going to take that same design and apply it in other places, like if you're doing a neighborhood or even a condo and you're using that same concept across in different parts of the site, BIMing would be very, very beneficial. But if you're just doing one of them and you have maybe one electrician, one plumber, and one duct guy out there doing their job, they're pretty good at coordinating with each other and they know where they're supposed to go. The reality of them being in each other's space is very limited. So there might not be a purpose for that. It could be handled by a more traditional project manager or coordinator.
And I've heard it enough too. You talk about some of the small scale things. If you're scaling your product or your service, it definitely makes more sense than a one-off. But if you look at modular, you look at tiny homes, you look at companies like Boxable and others who are building thousands of these things, they've absolutely BIMmed their product. Guarantee you. They've engineered it, they've designed it, they've conceptualized it in 3D spaces. They understand unit rates, they understand costs, they understand everything that goes into their product. And BIM as a building information model, as a tool belt, has allowed them to be more efficient in that product development and marketing and sales and everything that goes into it.
You take that design, you copy, paste it other places, you can print it off and have it shipped. You can drop ship buildings. It's essentially how that works.
So to be clear, me building my one cabin up in Payson, maybe not. Will drop shipping, 50,000 homes, tiny homes, you should probably have BIM.
Correct.
Absolutely. I would agree so.
Yeah.
Now, Justin, if you want to build your little cabin up there, if the price is right, we could always say, hey, let's create a 3D model for you. We'll go scan the site, make sure it fits, make sure you don't have to demo any trees or nothing. We'll make it happen.
Love it. I love the salesmanship. So one big question we always have is like, how do you get buy-in from the people, the boots on the ground, right? So that not necessarily somebody in the office, but how do you get people buy-in from a superintendent level? Like, technology isn't always the first thing they think of as like, this is going to be beneficial for my job site. So how do you get them to buy in?
That's been a pain point in the past, but it's also been something that both Jacob and I are passionate about, is that communication and bringing people to the table. When we first started, or I'll use my experience as a modeler at the same company, we were starting that BIM department, and the field technicians, the installers, they kind of felt like the BIM team was taking the creativity away from their job, and so it was more of a mindset shift that had to take place. Me coming in there doing the modeling, they thought I was telling them what I wanted them to do, and they had to follow it. And that is absolutely not true. I'm not an installer. I manipulate the software. I'm able to use it to get you the results that you're looking for in order to streamline the process. So I need your buy-in. I need your words. I need your experience. Otherwise, this won't work. So actually, it takes time. You sit down with them, you have these conversations, and no one wants to waste time. So 10 minutes down the line, they see that this conversation has to take place, that you are going to find solutions. And so they start presenting their solutions. And then as time goes on, you get out in the field, they actually implement what we talked about in the meeting. And then it really closes that loop. It makes them feel like they were part of that whole process. They manage the entire coordination effort. So that's how I've been able to get the buy-in, is by just having those conversations. And then on the back end as well, the BIM helps you understand where problems went wrong in the install process. You can identify your issues with your installing, and also things that are costing a little bit more. So that can also cause issues, but it does streamline the process quite a bit.
Yeah, so let me pause there for a second.
Yeah.
Traditionally, let's talk about sources of truth for a second, because I think that is what BIM helps solve. Would you agree?
Yeah, yes. I love what you just said there. That's great. Sources of truth.
Because part of the problem is communication, especially live on the field versus architect versus engineer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when updates happen to the plans,
yes,
and the timeliness of plan updates, and then obviously what everyone hates to some degree or another is rework, right? Preventing some sort of rework. How much does this consolidate to a single source of truth? Is it the single source of truth, or is it changing it from like 20 sources of truth to just maybe a handful?
We want it to be the single source of truth. Every project, I know I probably sound like a broken record here. Every project's different. It all depends on the accountability and the integrity of the project stakeholders contractually, how it's written into contracts. There's some subs that may or may not have varying degrees of BIM involvement. Some may say, hey, this is our deliverable. This is XYZ. This is what we're going to do. We're not going to do anything beyond that or less than that. Or you may have another subcontractor who maybe does have a degree of involvement a little higher. A good example of this, I'll go back to this one at TSMC. Has some work with JB Henderson, wonderful contractor, process contractor. Was able to work with them and their BIM group, detailed CAD services, and support them from a VDC aspect and help manage their project. It was really fascinating to work on that project with countless number of other trades, where what I just said in terms of varying degrees of involvement differed like vastly. It was crazy. But JB Henderson, we allowed them to stick to a plan. We went from A through Z, and we said, this is what our deliverable is going to be. Get a little technical. We're going to say we're going to do an LOD 400 model. It's going to be constructible. We want to do prefabrication to some degree. We want shop drawings. We want ISOs. We want to be able to build everything, bring it on site, weld it all up, sign it off, be done, get it commissioned and all. So with that understanding, we were able to start with the process from the very beginning. Okay, what do we need to put into our models? Who's going to do it? How's it going to be done? We need to get buy-off from the general contractor. We need to get buy-off from other entities. We call that an IFC process or an IFF process, issue for fabrication. So we walk through this path with them. And at the very end, when you start installing and then you realize somebody's in my space, or this is not going to fit here, or we need to find a new location, we can have all this documentation all the way back to the beginning and say, hey, this is what the plan was. What happened?
Mhm.
9 times out of 10, we were not at fault. I could probably even say 9.9 out of 10, we were not at fault. It was always somebody else who either did not have a clear plan, they didn't use models for what they were intended for, they were not coordinating with other people in the project coordination space, and it gave us the credibility to say, you're wrong, you need to move. Rip your content out, you're in our space, and you're at cost.
Mhm.
And if you don't, and we have to move, well, here's a change order, move on.
Mhm.
Boy.
Yeah. So that's where, when we start talking about contracts and you start talking about this, you really get into the details of that. It is really, really important on these mega projects that you are very accountable to it, because I think that what gives BIM a bad rap in these projects is when there's no accountability, it does become a cost overrun. It
Mhm.
does become obnoxious. People hate it. It's costing them millions of dollars, and they're like, what are we getting out of it?
Mhm.
We're not solving our problems because we're not being efficient. Well, that's what Cole and I want to do. We want to say, hey, let's cut out all this crap. Let's focus on what really matters. And everybody's got their own opinion about it. I think
Mhm.
everybody's opinion is true to a degree. So let's figure out what works best for everybody as a whole and solve these issues.
Everybody's
You
got
mentioned-
an opinion and they all stink. I think it's what.
Yeah.
You mentioned term LOD. Can you, for the people out there that are listening, what does LOD mean? And can you give sort of different levels? Because I mean, it's everything from 100 to 600, I think, and then 1D to 40, 5D, 60. You talked about 90 even.
So there's 2 things there. You have BIM dimensions, which is 1D through traditionally 7D. We'll leave that where it stands. It's just different degrees of BIM and implementation. LOD is a level of development. How detailed is your BIM going to be? 100 is concept, 200 is plans, traditional plans, plan views, elevations, etc. LOD 300 is the 3D element. You've got some 3D environment where you can conceptualize what your project's going to look like. It's not super detailed. It may not be to manufacturer specs, but at least you have something to represent it. It's geometry, it's space management. LOD 350 is correlated with material specifications. It's very specific. You can pull in cut sheets. You know exactly. If you look at the model and you click on an element to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, that's EMT, or that's rigid, or you can say that's stainless steel, or it's natural gas.
Mhm.
OD 400 is now you're saying this is not just a construction model, but this can be built according to scale. Can be built according to specific measurements. You've included hardware, you've got nuts, bolts, accessories, everything included. And that's where Colton talked about, if you're then prefabbing, if you're doing offsite, you can take that 400 model, you can basically send it to a fab shop and say, hey, build this, put it on a truck and go bolt it on in the fab. And then lastly is LOD 500, which is going to be your as-built. Once the project's done, you can go in and you can dimension everything. You can use reality capture. You can do traditional hand takeoffs, ISOs, and then rebuild the model in the back end and have it match exactly what's in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And the great reference for this, which I traditionally follow, is LOD BIM forum. And you can Google that and find that. And that's generally what we follow when we're doing bids and proposals, is we're going to say we're doing LOD 300 according to BIM form LOD, and they come out with standards like every year, every 2 years.
So 400, you can build it. Like, you can literally hear all the pieces to build it.
Hit print.
And you're saying also people are talking about 10, 910, right? That's in existence? Through
90,
10?
90, 10D, everything. Yep.
What the hell else do you have left? If you've got it all, if you've got full content, you can literally build the thing. What else is there above it? You don't have to go into each individually, but like, what are big concepts of like, if you want 700, well, that's X.
Well, it's funny. What's frustrating from our point of view is the space, at least we've been in the projects on, they don't even get beyond 3D. They don't even get beyond the 3D models, because once you hit 40, you're talking about schedule. When are people tying a 3D model into a schedule? There's platforms out there. Bentley has a great one called Synchro that does it. There's a few others where you can actually tie model elements into a schedule and say, hey, we can track as this project moves on if your P6 or something is actually built right and a project actually uses it, which we're seeing less and less of in some of our spaces, unfortunately. There's some great correlation back and forth. And then you jump to 5D, which is going to be cost. You can actually pull every single element out of that model, every nut, bolt, piece of conduit, linear feet, whatever you want. And you can actually, you can estimate it and you can build cost into your entire project. You get beyond that, you get 60 environmental stuff, 70, you got operations and maintenance. There's some people that are there, but I'm going to say majority of them are not. Bring it back to the 3D and understand why you're using the model in the first place. What do you want to get out of it? Then let's have the conversation about where we need to go. Everybody wants the big, brand new stuff. They want to use AI. They want to use all these tools, but they hardly even know how to use a model, let alone know how to view it or how to extract any data from it.
So what I just heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I just heard is you're talking about, I think the term that I've heard before is TCO, total cost of ownership, and the length of time for total cost of ownership, right? There's the total cost of ownership just to the point of the end of the project. There's total cost of ownership of, well, I've developed the building, right? There's the total cost of ownership of I've developed the building and now I'm running the things that are inside of the building. And then there's total cost of ownership of like the 20-year maintenance or whatnot, right? Okay. So that's a very holistic view, and I totally understand why people would not be using the more advanced ones. But 4D, to me, sounds like the fourth dimension is time, because that's to do with scheduling. So 3D, the difference between 3D and 4D is really, are your different crews getting in the way or not of each other? Yes. Along with all the equipment that goes with it. And most people don't have the processes, except for maybe the really big contractors like the Turners and stuff like that out there. They probably don't have the processes in place or the maturity to go, I have so much process that I will not overlap, and I have cost control on top of it, because now you're controlling time elements, which is super precious but hard to control on smaller projects. Okay, that totally makes sense to me.
Well, I like that you brought that out too, because look at the different involvement. Whether it is a Turner or another general contractor, they're going to have more control, more oversight over that schedule as a whole, and are going to dictate the input that goes into it. A subcontractor is going to focus on their scope. If it's an electrical contractor, they may take their BIM and build it into their own personal P6 and say, okay, Here's what we have for our scope. Cable trays can go in, duct banks are going to go in, etc. But they don't care about everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So it really comes down to a project as a whole, the owner, the GC, PMO, whoever it is. Are they implementing BIM? Are they implementing in the models? Are they wanting to take it as far as to putting it in a schedule? Do they see the value in using the BIM and tying it into other facets of a project in terms of cost and schedule? If they're not, then when they need to be careful as to, how far are they pushing contractors, or what is the expectation for the use? What is the deliverable? Is everybody going to just do arts and crafts, as Colton says? Are they going to create pretty pictures? Or does the owner really want to take this BIM model, and do they want to extract all the data out of it? Intel's done a great job of that in recent years. They use quantity surveyors like Faithful and Gold and Curry and Brown and others, and where they can actually go into the model and they'll actually do takeoffs of trade scope and say, hey, you guys should have installed X number of linear feet of conduit. We're gonna send you a check for what's in the model, not necessarily what's in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And projects are leaning this way, because then your model, in a sense, like your design packages, your IFC packages, that's the contract document.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're building to. So if you're holding trades responsible to the model and saying that's what you're going to get billed, or that's what you're going to get paid on, you want it to be absolutely accurate.
And when you start, sorry to cut you off, Justin, if I could.
Go ahead.
So just to piggyback off of that with the experience out there in the subfab, there it goes up. So you first start out with the architectural model, the structural model, and you find a lot of trades. They put a beautiful little hole right in this spot where everyone wants to transfer through that hole. It's not big enough for all the trades, so you have the trades fighting over it. Right? If you identify that early on in the process, you can get up the chain, and they could put more than one hole. They could put several different pass-throughs for the trades. So we've actually implemented that in some previous projects where they've added more core holes and fireproofed it in order to add more room for the trades, because it is a great pass-through. So it's the coordination effort as a whole. It goes up and down the chain as we're going through the process.
So as you were saying this, obviously you gave the example of like, well, a trade partner, especially trade, can come in and just do, hey, we're just doing this, so we're only focused on this, and we have a model for that. But is the model coming from the GC or from a developer? Like, what is there, as this process is happening, I assume like the GC is saying, hey, this is what we're building. These are all the trades that are involved in this building. We expect you to do your portion of this. But wouldn't you want that trade to use their expertise upon, hey, like we should be doing it X this way or that way, compared to there's a reason why things are subcontracted out, because of the fact of like, well, we're not the experts here. We don't have the manpower to do this, and we don't necessarily know the best way to approach plumbing or electrical or whatever it is. So how is it built to make sure that like, oh, what you've built in this BIM model from the top is actually the best way to do it as you pass it down the line to the trades?
Well, that's what's fascinating now more so than ever is contract methodology, when and how people are being introduced to projects. Different types of subcontractors won't get an RFP until after design's so far down the road. They don't have
ground's
any,
been broken.
But also the other way is, well, how do you get on, especially on a project this big, take a TSMC, for example, you can't bring in 50, 60 subs and have them all give input in the design process. Nothing will ever get done. So there has to be. I
thought that's wwhy you were in place. You bring them all in and then you organize them. Isn't that the whole thing?
I feel like there's a joke here of how many engineers it's to take to screw in a light bulb.
Well, that's what's so interesting now more than ever is what do we need to do in terms of collaboration from a cost standpoint? Because everybody's in business. Everybody wants to get paid. If you're going to have 50 people come in, how much time is it going to take? Do we have the right input? Let's say one person says one thing and 6 months down the road, they're gone. And somebody's like, who the heck made this decision?
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more challenging than what you see at face value. But I think that's where there's a ton of opportunity, especially at the owner level, GC level, a lot of the EPC PMOs is, what are we saying at on the high level concept side of it, pre-construction? What are we doing to understand the end goal, the deliverable? If we know that we want a specific BIM dimension or BIM LOD at the very end, Well, let's have those conversations. Let's talk with the trades early on. Let's talk with the engineers, architects. Let's understand the commissioning side of it. Let's understand all the other variables that go in and make sure everybody understands what it is we're actually building and how we're going to do it. The worst thing that I've ever seen on a couple projects, and I won't say the project specifically on these ones, but when you get subcontractors involved and they get given a design model and it can vary. Sometimes they can just be given some plan sets and they can PNIDs, one lines, whatnot, and say, go build a 3D model. Or other times they can get like an LOD 200, 300, where it's actually a 3D design model. And then you're told to go trace it. Okay, now go make it constructible based off of your construction experience. And everybody has a different way of doing that. They use different softwares in how they author. And then the goal is you bring everybody back together in what we call a federated model. And you have design model, you have construction models all roped into one, and you say, let's figure it out. So you throw everything into a big pot and say, let's make it work. When you get onto a project, and not every contractor is involved in that, sometimes because they contractually are not, sometimes because they don't have the teams to do it. And so they oftentimes either don't do it or do the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the other contractors. Great props to people like Harder Mechanical. I mean, awesome BIM program. They have incredible prefabrication processes. They do a lot of modular offsite OSM. And it's hard for them to come in because then they get frustrated. They see other people. It's like, these guys aren't doing anything. How are we supposed to coordinate? How are we supposed to stay on top of our game and build one time? The whole point of doing BIM is to build out once and not have to rework, not have to rip out. When these other guys are just stick building and they're just going in there and getting everybody's way.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes the project so challenging. It makes you want to just hit your head against the wall and say, why are we doing this? And even for me, as a BIM person, as a BIM BDC, I sometimes get those experiences in the projects, and it's tough because like this is the world I'm in, and it's really not going well.
So if a specialty trade doesn't have a BIM person or a BIM team, who then builds it? Or do we say like, we're just gonna avoid using you because you don't have somebody that can actually give us input that is in the same language model and everything else that you just explained?
You have to have
depending on project.
everyone on the same playing field. Everyone has to be at that level.
They
Go
do,
ahead,
and so it all depends contractually too. RFPs and bids. Some of them will explicitly say like, you need to have a BIM program and we need proof of that, et cetera, et cetera. Or others may say, yeah, we require this. You guys figure it out. So if you got a subcontractor who doesn't know anything about BIM, and I've done some of these too, they call you up and say, hey, can you BIM this for us? Can you give us these pictures? It's like, that's really not how it works. They've already signed a contract. They've already got price locked in. So there's not a lot of flexibility. And those ones are the best to work with because they have this fixed price and you have to work inside of it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, their responsibility is either build in-house, which is very difficult, or two, outsource it. And then you have 1,000 different people with different opinions on how that scope should be done.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. Really, really exciting space. And across different industries, different verticals, it differs. Oil and gas is way different than it would be for like commercial, and it would be for semiconductor, data center. Principles are generally the same. There's typical precedents in terms of BIM modeling and accountability, but project types and specs and engineering, it can vary.
What about some war stories? What are things that you've seen that BIM saved the day here? Like BIM saved this project a ton of rework or a ton of change orders.
I have one that comes to mind. I'll jump in here before you, Jacob.
Yeah, please.
Another story from the subfab. When Jacob and I were down there, we had implemented some laser scanning ideologies or practices so that we can actually get the content into the model accurately. And we had been scoped with this specialty generator that pretty sure it's a generator. It's some sort of equipment, a big piece of equipment that was down in the depths of the bowels of the subfab. And we had to go all the way down there, 7 flights of stairs, deep down into the dungeons of this place. And we spent a lot of time down there. We figured out exactly where they needed to place it. We even put little stickered X's on the ground where each corner is going to have to be put of that generator. And we knew he's going to work exactly. We modeled all the piping, the blowers, the diffusers, everything was exactly where it needed to be. We had it mounted to the wall, to the columns. It was beautiful. I was very proud of this solution we provided. I got a call the day the equipment was delivered, and they said, your model's not going to work. And I said, no, it's going to work. I know for a fact it's going to work. What, did they send the wrong generator? There's something different than for what I expected. And I said, no, it's all the same. So I went out there and I looked in the field, and generator was on the X's. Everything was exactly where I put it. And I'm like, what's going on here? Long story short, it came down that one of the main blowers that came out at the top of the unit was offset quite a bit. And the installer didn't install it the exact location that we had specified. And because of that, all the piping that went up out of the equipment was different. Everything had to change. And that would have cost the company 2-3 weeks of rework for all of us to go in there, us to re-BIM it, for them to reinstall it. Everything would have just been a nightmare. I can't even put a dollar amount to that. But since we were able to identify that the problem was just that they used the wrong bolt hole, and yeah, exactly, let's slide it from here to here, and it magically works. That is what we do. That is how we do it. And there are mistakes that are going to happen. And being that person that was able to answer that in time and not have to have a hiccup in the whole timeline of the project, it was huge. It's a big deal. It saves lots of time and money on the back end.
That's amazing. That's tons and tons of saved money. Also, not to mention, I didn't know BIM people were such athletes. 7 flights of stairs up and down times. Holy shit.
You stay in shape working out there in those semiconductor fabs. You'll go walk multiple miles a day.
Sometimes 15 miles. It's crazy.
If you want, I got 2 brief stories I can share. Some
Yeah, please.
I got a horror story and then also a really good example of how and why it works.
Do it. Let's hear it.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is kind of funny. It goes to show, I'd go as far as saying some of the ignorance or maybe the misconceptions about BIM. We were working, it was TSMC, and there was some structural overhead racks that were carrying some pipe and cable tray and whatnot. And a contractor I was working for claimed that those racks were not installed per the BIM model. And so we went out there, we scanned it with the laser scanner, and sure enough, we compared the point cloud against the model. And yeah, they were out. They were like 6 inches lower than they should have been. And so we brought a team of 13, 14 people together into the BIM room, different contractors, everybody that has some scope on that rack, said, hey, here's what's going on. And the rack installer, he's like, we don't trust the point cloud. Says, and it gets better than this. He's like, no, we're sure that it fits, blah, blah, blah. And they took 13 people out there. So we already have the 30, 40 minutes in an office. They then walked 13 people out to the fab. And so at this point, they've probably killed an hour and a half, 2 hours of day for that many people to then pull out a tape measure and find out that absolutely they were wrong. They cut them back and say, yeah, I guess you're right. It's funny. We have the process, the tools, technology. Why are we not using it?
Mm-hmm.
Come on. The point cloud doesn't lie.
Time.
13 people's time. 2 hours. I mean, it's small in terms of 3 years of a project, but come on. What an absolute waste of money. What a waste of time. You could have said, we've scanned this. This is survey grade equipment. I mean, the accuracy is 3 millimeters or less. I mean, it's insane. And you're going to say that the point cloud is wrong? Like, come on. Another good example on the positive side is similar, actually it was an Intel project, similar to a story to Colton's in a way. But we were working out there, and there was some distribution panels, transformer, and branch panels that we were trying to locate in the space. We were working directly with the engineer at this point. It was base build scope. And I should clarify, we've gone almost an hour in this conversation. There's 2 generally different scopes on semiconductor building. It's base build, which is going to be your core install, your structure, everything goes into it. And then tool install, which is the equipment manufacturing equipment, so that we go and install. So base build here, we're talking about large panels. Engineer had mapped out, he'd given us some plan drawings and said, hey, this is where this needs to go. We've gone out there, we've measured it, it's going to fit. So we know our clearances, we know our equipment clearances, we know radiuses on conduit. I mean, at this point, we're using 3-4 inch conduit, so pretty large radiuses. And Colton and I were working on this one with another modeler at the time, and I was out there very heavily in the field. I was like, this ain't going to fit. I already know the radius is on these conduit. We've had these other experiences. And it was a little tough because we actually had to go to the engineer and call him out in a nice way and said, hey, this isn't going to fit. This is going to work. And they typically don't like to hear that.
No.
They're like, no, we've spec'd this. This is right. I even had our project manager. She's like, hey, you got to be careful what you say. You can't just go to Intel engineer and tell them they're wrong. It's like, well, why not? Whatever. They're wrong. Like, let me tell the truth.
They're like, we're not wrong. We're Intel.
Yeah.
And so we modeled it for him and we put it in that space because we had it scanned and we're like, dude, it's not going to fit. And you should have seen his eyes. Again, there was at this point, we were a couple days into it, got a couple engineers together from Intel and from Jacobs, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. So we'd not modeled anything in any sense of technicality, but not super far down the road. We'd not fabbed anything. We've not installed anything. Think about if we had not done that process.
Mm-hmm.
They have a transformer, distribution board, 4-inch conduit for a couple hundred feet, wire. If they had gone to put all that in, that would have been horrible. And what that proved from that moment on, we worked with that engineer super closely for months. He's like, I want you guys to work on all our base build scope, all our electrical. We laid out everything. We scanned it, we BIMmed it, and we were able for months to just go in one time, model it, install it, done, signed off. And there was never rework. We actually shortened schedules. We decreased the cost on everything. And they were ecstatic. At one point, they gave credit to the team as a whole. There were so many awesome people on it. They're like, this is the best subcontract group we've ever seen in terms of BIM. They've got it figured out, and that's the model that Cole and I we've decided years ago. We're like, that's what we got to do. We've got to run with this. It's not so super crazy. It's just communicating.
Simple.
Figuring out solutions with the tools that we have and make it work for the people that care about it.
Did anyone else hear that? I heard cha-ching.
Yeah. I
That's
wish I wish I made some money on that one.
Sped up, cost went down. What?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, there's a lot of great VDC BIM groups out there. I could name off 100 of them. Like not that many, but a lot. Awesome BIM companies out there. Nothing bad to say about any of them. We could recommend a ton of them on our end. We're not going to go out there and compete with these big BIM companies. You know, from a scalability standpoint, you got the VECs and others who have hundreds of people around the world. That's not our forte. We will model, and we do a really exceptional job at it. But our goal is to say, we want to come in here help you understand your process. Where does BIM need to be improved? Where do the right people need to be in the right place in the right time? And we love being on site. We love boots on the ground. That's where the differences are made. And I wish more people would be more apt to that, especially in the BIM side. You get a lot of office people who don't want to get out of the office. They like working remote, which I'm all for. But there's something special about working with the supers, the project managers, being outside with the foreman. I mean, that's really where all the work is done there.
Agreed.
Justin, I'd love to talk longer about this, but I feel like we're coming to the end of our episode, which means it's time for our last question. Want to take it away?
For sure. So we love to ask this question, and individually you can answer. So flip a coin or whatever, paper, rock, scissors, who goes first. But if you could go back 20 years, what advice would you give yourself?
20 years ago, I would have been 14.
2005.
I would have been 14.
That's great time.
At 14, I was telling everyone that I wanted to be an engineer and I wanted to be an inventor. I wanted to design things I don't want to be designing things that are new. I want to take things that are already implemented and make them better. And so I would say if I could go back to my 14-year-old self, I'd say stay true to what you want to do. You are going to continue to make things better. Don't let people tell you that what you're doing is wrong, because if you are wrong, you'll admit to it and you'll figure it out and not make that mistake again. So that's the advice I would give myself. Stay true to yourself.
Nice. What about you, Jacob?
As introverted as I am, I'm recognizing now that I'm more of a people person than I ever thought I was. And if I were to go back, given all that I know, is be better at communicating, understanding where people are at, what their needs are, being able to comprehend the environment, situations, talk about emotional intelligence, being aware of your surroundings from a personal and a physical standpoint. It allows you to be more apt, or more capable and able to find solutions to the crazy world that's around you. Specifically in the construction AEC space, never ending. And we often say there's money in chaos. So let's find the chaos, let's solve it, and let's be better about doing that as individuals and as a whole.
Love that. I couldn't agree more. I frequently say internally here at Spot, and just anytime I'm talking to people, good communication solves 90% of problems. It's just, it's as easy as that. There's some technical things that need to occur in whatever you're doing in your life, but in general, if you just communicate extraordinarily well, you're gonna find success very easily over and over again. So that's great advice.
To piggyback off of what Jacob just said, money is in chaos and communication gets rid of the chaos. So what's left? So that's what we're here to try to figure out, is how to streamline all these processes. So it's been a lot of fun, guys. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, this has been great. We're going to throw all your social in the show notes and all that fun stuff. But if a listener wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Our website
or LinkedIn. You know, we're pretty active on LinkedIn. If you want to message me, email and everything's on there. I mean, it's all out there. Pretty open book. Give me a phone call, text, whatever. HansenConsultingGroup.org or Jacob Hansen on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And is there anything else you'd like to tell the people before we say our goodbyes?
Call us. We want to help you with the process. Just kidding. No, absolutely. No, even to just talk. You know, I love to, as you guys, you know, with the podcast, I'm a little jealous. It's awesome just talking with other people in the industry, whether it's the same space. You know, there's a lot that we can learn from each other.
Absolutely.
A lot that we can learn.
I love both of your responses there, but you'd be surprised because, like, yeah, absolutely, call us. Like, yeah, this is the grand opportunity to say, like, hey, let us help you with your BIM projects. We're totally here for you, right? And that never happens. Nobody ever says it. We give this opportunity for everybody, and nobody's like, oh yeah, by the way, I do this thing, and you should call me about it. So, kudos to you for thinking first thing out of your head. Boom, that's where you got to be.
Yeah, we have laser scanners and equipment. Use us. If you have anything that you want scanned, just give us a call. We can work with you. It's not super expensive, so.
I'll have to call you when I'm building my cabin.
There you go.
Too bad it wasn't on a call. I'd fly up there for you too.
Yeah.
Awesome. This has been a ton of fun. It was really great talking to you guys. And until next time, adios.
Adios.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Adios. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
Keep building scale.
Scale.